Okay, hi everyone. Just going to make sure that we have the slideshow on and running. There it is. And I want to make sure that I'm on screen share with you, which it looks like I am, which is perfect. And we are ready to go. So, looking at a recap from chapter 1. Let's do that quick. Explicit meaning means that the answers can be found directly in the text. So that's very important for you to remember. Implicit meaning, you must be like a detective and look for those hidden meanings, the theme, the message, what the author is trying to convey. You will not find the answer in the black and white text. Analogies, that's a comparison of two pieces of information for the purpose of clarification or further explanation. Citing textual evidence.
When I say naturally, I missed that you said you were inspired by me. That's not what I meant. Just to be clear, naturally, because you did the meditation, you tapped in, you connected, and then you had the power of the group intention behind it too. So not surprised at all that you were able to just like hammer that puppy out and in such an authentic and uniquely you way. So love, 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 love it.
Citing textual evidence means that quote are the quotes that come directly from the text that supports the author's ideas and messages. The central idea and themes. The central idea, and you really need to get this, the central idea is the main point of the passage versus the central theme, which is the main message or the lesson. So when you're going through and you're reading the text, these concepts need to be constantly playing through your mind as strategies. It's kind of like tools that you're putting in your toolbox. And as you're going, you're digging through, you're looking for quotes, you're looking for the main idea, you're looking for the lesson or the message that's running through, you're looking to draw comparisons, you're looking to see what does the author say and then what's actually the message behind the words. Like, you need to have this constantly flowing through your mind so that you can quickly deconstruct a piece of writing. Even if the language is difficult for you, you can deconstruct it quickly so that you can get to the test questions and answer them to the best of your ability. Lastly, you have summarizing. It's condensing all of the information gathered in a story to make a one consolidated statement about the passage. And then finally, the relationship. So looking at the cause and effect, compare and contrast, the problem solution, sequencing to draw comparisons between the passages. It's critical. It's just like how we practiced last week, where you had to make those comparisons between the two articles. Now, don't forget, for your SAT, there's going to be 5 passages that you have to read for reading, just the reading portion. And then you go to the writing piece, and although the passages are going to be less in terms of number of words, you're still going to have 5 more passages to read in order to answer the writing questions. So the amount of time that they actually give you is not a lot. So you need to know these main ideas, these main features, so that you can just cut through the passage like a knife through butter. It has to be natural too. You have to practice it. When you come back on Tuesday again after Thanksgiving, we're going to deconstruct another passage. I'm not going to give you 2 this time. I'm only going to give you 1 because I do want to spend some time on the concept of rhetoric. Last, interpreting words, determining the meaning of the word based on its context and how it was used by the author. Analyzing word choice. So here's where we start getting into the concept of rhetoric. So we're going to leave now chapter 1. Now we're looking at chapter 2 and getting into this concept of rhetoric. And the use of words is the very, very foundation of rhetoric. It's how the writers choose the words they're going to use to shape the meaning and tone of the text. So, certain words help readers understand information or emotions. For example, the word house. Okay, so just plain old word house. If you're talking about a grand house, there's a dramatic effect that comes along with that descriptor, grand, that gives it like a la la shi kind of, you can envision something fancy, something dramatic. The shadow cloaked house. Well, something that's encased in shadows is something that might be scary or spooky. The secret filled house gives the effect of mystery. The zany house, like whacked out, like funny, hilarious, ongoing, constantly in upheaval, and people laughing and having a good time. Everything's just crazy. And then the warm and welcoming house, I picture grandma's house, something soothing, something relaxing, calm colors, warm environment, smells. So we're still looking at the word house, but how the author frames their words or chooses the words that surround the main idea really changes the effect or the tone of what is trying to be expressed through the article or the passage. Commonly used phrases have built-in meaning. As if that weren't enough. And we've heard that expression lots of times. As if that weren't enough. It implies absurdity, like ridiculousness. Like as if that weren't enough, then we went and had another flood and we were knee deep in water again. So it's kind of like an expression, but has a very specific meaning that's attached to it. Writers also make comparisons to derive tone. For example, the cat was like a car that had run out of gas. Well, that describes my cat perfectly to a T, who's currently sitting beside me. Even if I nudge her, kick her, call her name, the best I can get out of her is a little wag of her tail, and that's pretty much the end of it. The cat's not moving. So they're making a comparison. The cat was like a car that had run out of gas. It ain't moving. It's tired. So looking at those comparisons, again, is going to give you some tone or overall meaning or effect that the author is trying to create. Do you need to know this piece? Yes, you actually need to know this piece. Text structure. It's important. It refers to how the writer actually organizes a piece of writing. Most writers have a particular style. There are common stylistic forms that authors use. And usually what an author does is that they end up tweaking it so that it becomes their own. But there are basic structures that are used for writing. And it's not just a feature, but it conveys meaning and is important to the central idea. And remember that the central idea is kind of like what the passage is all about. It has nothing to do with the message. We're looking at just the idea. So here's a couple of different methods. The first one is a cyclical structure. So it starts with particular ideas, it moves through a series of progressions, and then it returns to the original idea. You've probably been taught this in your writing classes, in your language classes, time and time again, this cyclical structure, where in the opening paragraph you introduce the main theory or the main theme or the main concept, the main characters, and then you build your story in the middle, and then at the end you have to make sure that your conclusion addresses what it was that you started with at the beginning. You'll also use this format when you're writing major papers. and especially for college and university, where you're actually providing a thesis statement in your opening paragraph and you're concluding with a summary that kind of answers that thesis question or statement that you're making in the beginning. The descriptive structure, the text consists almost entirely of description to help a reader understand how something looks, feels, sounds, and behaves. So you can imagine that, in a science report, for example, or in a passage that's scientific, this would be important because you're actually looking at describing how something looks, feels, sounds, and behaves as part of the analysis of whatever it is that you're testing. Compare and contrast structure. The text examines the similarities. Who's here, buddy?
My friends that have special needs.
Okay, what are you doing?
I want to see my Supreme stuff. He has Down syndrome, and he's
Don't joke about that. It's not funny.
autistic.
Okay, can you be in?
Come on.
Can you be I'm gonna go in the other room. Can you keep it down because I'm videotaping right now?
Okay. Hello. Hi.
How you doing, hon?
Good.
What's your name?
Noah.
Noah what?
Abraham.
What school you go to?
You like most of your ugly skin cut out. You like pink? Do they bite? No.
Are you a good kid or a bad kid?
Good.
How do I know you're good?
I don't know.
Kind of grades you get?
A's.
Do you do drugs?
No.
Do you listen to your parents?
Yes.
All the time?
Mostly.
How often you get grounded?
Never.
Never.
Barely. I've got grounded once.
Never. See, this is honest. How many?
Once.
Thank you. Okay, you pass.
I get hit 6 times. Everyone has to go through it.
That's right. Everybody goes through it. I told you you're not the only one. The text examines the similarities and differences between two or more ideas, individuals, situations, or events. Keywords are also, both, similarly, in contrast, on the other hand, however, by the same token, as well as. So you're looking for that compare and contrast structure that exists. Again, you might find that in scientific notation. You might find that in an article that is doing a critique or a review of something, where it has both strengths and weaknesses, or something that they want to try and compare. Block structure, discussed on topic before, one topic is what it should say, I'm sorry. Discussed one topic before another, and then point by point structure alternates between various aspects of both topics. Okay, continuing on. Let me just get out of here. I want to make sure I'm still sharing with you, which I'm not. Let's get back to the share screen and continue on. Sorry. Okay, here we go. We're going to analyze text structure. So cause and effect structure. This is a text that explains or introduces an idea, and then the effect happens as a result. So we looked at cause and effect in chapter 1, right? Something happens and then there's a result. So cause and effect. So the text actually explains or introduces this idea, and then the effect of that happens as a result. So some of the key words that you're looking for to determine if it's a cause and effect structure would be so, therefore, since, as a consequence, as a result, consequently, affected, because, due to. I suffered a horrendous headache today due to the atmospheric pressure and the changes that came in with the storm. So cause and effect. Problem and solution structure. The text introduces a problem or a series of problems before the solution is presented. Some of the key words in this case are, the question is, that's why, the problem is, to solve this, one answer, and so on and so forth. You can read the rest of this, for yourself. But essentially, the problem with SAT is that, they pose really difficult types of questions where you have two answers that look almost identically the same. To solve this problem, you attend an SAT course through A21 Academy and you improve your skill set in order to be more successful and be able to choose the correct answer. So there's an example for you of a problem and solution structure. Sequence structure is a text structured in order of when the events take place or according to steps in a procedure. So obviously, scientific notation again would be here talking about a particular timeline, maybe a newspaper article where there are a series of events that happened over a period of time. And you're going to find the keywords being something like first, second, third, finally, next, and so on. Analyzing part or whole relationships. So text consists of numerous smaller parts. The basic building blocks of any text are its sentences, the details, examples, and information. They may also include quotations or parenthetical statements, meaning things that are in brackets or in quotation marks. For example, parts of a whole separated and described to make a statement about the whole. The New York Yankees produced some of the finest players in the history of baseball, comma, such as Reggie Jackson, Mickey Mantle, and Babe Ruth. Okay, so it's the various details or the examples are being separated by commas, and it's adding to the main idea of what it is it's trying to communicate, which is something about the history of baseball and the New York Yankees. Quotation, for example, is a section of the text consisting of words someone other than the principal writer said or wrote. For example, quotations add different perspectives and evidence to back up a statement, said one English teacher. So I can tell you that quotations add different perspectives, but I'm following up with what somebody else said. So even though I'm the principal speaker or the principal writer, I'm using quotations to back up my statement as a form of evidence. Where do you see this? Pick up any local newspaper, pick up magazines, and you will find quotes because it is a writer's best source to document and back up what they say to be true and reliable and valid. Parenthetical details are those ones that you find in the brackets. And, we also use them to make smiley faces and sad faces in text, but not in the SAT. So, relevant additional details set off with parentheses because they do not fit in with the flow of the text, but they add critical detail. So while it doesn't fit in the flow, it kind of almost accentuates what you're trying to get across. But it doesn't necessarily belong in the structure of the sentence. So they're like a little asides, much like the text you're reading right now. I gave you an example of parenthetical detail where I said, relevant additional details, which are set off with parentheses that, they look like, and then I would have brackets, they look like those brackets that you get on the smiley face emoji and the sad face emoji. That doesn't belong in the context of the sentence, but I would put it in parentheses because it adds those little asides or little details that gives you a flavor of how the writer speaks or communicates through his or her pieces of writing. These examples may be represented by a smaller portion of the entire text, but they have an overall effect on the text as a whole. So, you don't write one big quote and that's your article, or you're not going to find, an article or a passage of writing that's chocked full of something with parentheses because, first of all, it's just bad form. And second of all, it's going to throw the reader off. It doesn't make any sense. But when it's used appropriately and sporadically throughout a passage or text, it certainly adds to the overall effect on the text as a whole. It provides tone and attitude, which is what rhetoric is all about. The author often includes them to illustrate a point, to draw attention to an idea, or to make a point. Sentences are also grouped into paragraphs, which in turn can be further grouped into sections with headings. So we know this. We know starting from grade 1, your teacher had you make sentences that were 4 and 5 words long. And then you had to increase that to have 2 or 3 sentences that were strung together. And then you had to increase that to 5 to 8 sentences that were connected to make a paragraph. And then your paragraphs, depending on how long your actual passages, could be grouped and divided into subsections and divided with headings. The paragraph is a segment of written work that deals with a general idea or topic. It usually consists of 3 or more sentences. A section is a paragraph or a group of paragraphs that deal with a specific topic gathered under one heading. Looking at point of view, this is the stance that a writer takes when writing the text. The stance is usually comprised of attitude and opinion about a topic. If I say to you, Donald Trump, right away, that is going to elicit a point of view. There is going to be a definite attitude or an opinion about Donald Trump and perhaps his leadership, as president of the United States. The stance is generally determined by the type of language and the details the writer chooses either to use or omit. Omit, if you are uncertain, means to leave out completely. And what's really interesting, but can pose a challenge for students, is that omission of words can be just as strong as actually saying or putting it in print. It sometimes means even more. And it leaves the reader to infer, to come to their own conclusions about what the writer is trying to communicate. So it can be very powerful. The writer may be trying to persuade the reader to agree or to disagree with an opinion. Absolutely. So looking at the analysis of point of view, first of all, you have the advocate. And an advocate, while also could be seen as a lawyer, another word for a lawyer, advocate or to advocate is someone who speaks in support of an idea, a person, or a cause. A conservator is someone who wants to protect or preserve an idea or way of life. A critic is someone who speaks against an idea, a person, or a cause. An idealist is someone who romanticizes everything. By the way, romanticizing an idea doesn't have anything to do with relationships or romance in the sense of people being together and those sorts of things. Romanticizing an idea means to kind of have an idealistic, fancy, pie in the sky, flowerful, very descriptive, almost like a perfectionistic view of how the world should be, or how an idea should be, or how, like, a utopian kind of concept. Somebody who's very, pie in the sky, positive type person romanticizes an idea. A mentor is somebody who guides, teaches, or counsels a student, a colleague, a friend. It doesn't necessarily have to be a student. It's just one person is guiding, teaching, or counseling another. An observer is someone who makes impartial notes and observation, and the word impartial is critical. What it means to be impartial is that you leave all feelings out of it. You're just recording exactly what your senses are detecting. A reporter, a good reporter, although this doesn't always happen, but a good reporter is an impartial chronicler of current events. Impartial, again, meaning that you don't really take opinion one way or another, or you don't add your own emotion into the story. You're basically chronicling or recording or documenting current events as they occur. So that's where that sequential writing comes in that for the reporter, where they want to document things as they happen step by step, because who knows, it might lead to catching somebody who is breaking into people's homes. And so there's certain events, but they all have to be laid out in a proper order that's going to lead you to the criminal. And then when you go to court, for example, everything would have to be put in sequential order so that it makes sense and that the trial lawyers could get a conviction against a criminal. So having that impartiality and writing things down as they occur, very important. And a scholar is an expert on a particular topic. Usually by the time you get to colleges and universities, your professor is going to be very knowledgeable in one or two areas that fall under the same department. So if you're looking at psychology, you might have a professor that only teaches in the anthropological department of psych and soc. In languages, maybe they're only teaching French because that's what they do. In education, maybe they only teach curriculum as opposed to administration. So you start to get very, very specific and very specialized, especially trained people who teach you or impart upon you their knowledge of a particular topic that they've mastered. Elementary school, secondary school, you more or less have teachers that are generalists in the sense that they are savvy and worldly of a number of topics. Again, once you get to that university or college level, you start to deal with scholars that are leading expert in the field of their choice. Analyzing purpose. There's different purposes for different pieces of writing. For example, people can write to entertain. People can write to inform. People can write to persuade. You must analyze a text's language, tone, and information in order to decipher its purpose. what is the main reason why this person is writing what they're writing. Arguments. Persuasive writing makes an argument for or against a topic. So an argument includes a claim and then the evidence to back it up. And so, for example, I could make the argument that not Pierre, that's his dad, Justin Trudeau is a phenomenal prime minister and is doing amazing things given his experience and age. And then that's my claim. And now what I need to do as a writer is follow it up with some pretty strong evidence to try and persuade you that Justin Trudeau is in fact one of the best prime ministers we've had in decades. So the claim is the position the writer is arguing. For example, holidays are fun. Justin Trudeau is a great prime minister. The evidence supports the claim. So most people do not have to work on holidays so they can spend time enjoying them. Or Justin Trudeau is a fantastic prime minister because he knows how to connect with the commoners and the young people. He has been caught several times photobombing people when he's out for his run, greeting, meeting, and just being a regular, plain old person, and mixing it up with the people of Canada and really drawing people into politics that would have never even considered voting before. So there you go. There's my argument. An argument may also include a counterclaim, which is an argument that goes against the stated claim. So you could say to me, Lisa, I think that's completely false about Justin Trudeau. He goes out and photobombs people. How is that representative of a prime minister? We need somebody who's professional, who's going to stand up for the rights of Canadians and show his leadership through professionalism and policy and his stance on world peace and so on. So that would be a counterclaim that somebody makes against my original claim that I think he's probably the best prime minister we've had in decades. A persuasive text doesn't have to match purpose without claims. The claim is the backbone of an effective argument. Sometimes claims are stated explicitly. However, sometimes they are only implied. And this is where you have to be careful. On the SAT, you will have to identify claims explicitly stated and implied. Remember, implied means not visible in black and white on a page. In persuasive text, and determine the counterclaims using evidence. This is going to happen. So be sure you know what it is that you're looking for and that you understand the concept of claim, evidence, you understand quotations, you understand parentheses, and you understand the purpose for writing and how language affects the overall tone of the writer's message. When you're looking at reasoning, reasoning is simply making an argument. Sorry, let me try that again. Simply making an argument is not enough to be effective as a persuasive text. The reason behind the argument must be sound, meaning that you can't just make a claim and pull it out of thin air and say that you believe something just because that's what you think. And that's it. So I can't say to you that Justin Trudeau is the best prime minister this world has ever seen and should be the natural born leader of the free world. And somebody says, well, why do you think that? What evidence do you have to suggest that, he should reign the world? Well, I don't. It's just I like him. I think he's good. That's not sound reasoning. That's not a sound argument. People are going to dismiss that like bad habit, like fake news. On the SAT, you will have to recognize the implicit reasoning of arguments. There's that word again, implicit reasoning of arguments, and assess whether or not the arguments are valid, are true, are reasonable, are sound. The key to assessing the reasoning of an argument is to locate mistakes in the reasoning. These mistakes are called logical fallacies. So I'm going to say that again. The key to assessing the reasoning of an argument is to locate the mistakes in the reasoning. You're looking for errors. You're looking for holes in their presentation. And you would point that out as being a fallacy.
We're going to take them home.
Analyzing reasoning. Here are some examples of logical fallacies. The first one, and do you need to know this? Yes! Can you pronounce it? I don't know, but you got to know what it is. So, for example, an ad hominem. An ad hominem. It's attacking someone personally rather than criticizing their position on an issue. So, for example, no one's going to listen to you because, you're just a jerk. Well, you're criticizing somebody, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, that's a valid argument against what somebody's proposing because you're a jerk or because the person could be a jerk, but that's not a valid reason against the person's argument or statement. You have to look at the position on the issue and not attack someone personally. As soon as your reason or your defense becomes about somebody's personality or character, you're entering into what's called an ad hominem. Circular reasoning, that's when somebody goes round and round and round the bush. And basically what they do is they go round and round and round the bush to confuse you. They don't make any sense. So when the claim of an argument is made, it's essentially identical to the conclusion. Like it's all the same. They find 7 different ways to say the same message. For example, you have no idea what you're talking about because you don't make any sense. Well, essentially you just said the same thing twice and separated it with the word because. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't make sense. That means the same thing. It's circular reasoning. Fallacy of composition is assuming that what is true of a part of it is also true for the whole thing. So for example, Los Angeles is a fast-moving city, so California must be a fast-moving state. Well, that's not true. How can you make that assumption? It's a fallacy of composition to assume that the entire state of California is exactly the same as a megapolis such as Los Angeles or New York City, for example, and apply it to the whole entire state. Fallacy of composition is actually where racism comes from. It's where we pass judgments on people because of a few individuals that are making poor choices. Right now we're struggling in our community with the acceptance of people who are of Muslim faith. And why? Because there's a small group of people that are of Muslim faith that are, doing or committing these horrendous crimes in various parts of the world. Well, if that's what's happening with those people, then all Muslims must be bad. Well, that's not true, but it's perpetuating that racism and segregation of people. That's the fallacy of composition, where you look at a small piece and you paint everybody with the same brush. Incomplete comparison. This is a statement that masquerades as a comparison, but actually fails to make a comparison between two things. So, for example, this book is better. Okay, well, it's better than what? It's better than another book. It's better than the TV series. It's better than the movie that you just saw. So the statement went to make a comparison, but it wasn't complete. Here's my favorite. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. Do you have to know this one? Sure. Do you need this for your SAT? Yes. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. Confusing sequential order with cause and effect. Example, it rained after I heard thunder, therefore thunder caused the rain. What? It rained after I heard the thunder, therefore the thunder caused the rain. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily how meteorology works. And so therefore, you have an argument or an analysis of reasoning of post hoc ergo propter hoc, and I just really like to say that word. The next one is called the slippery slope, the assumption that one action will naturally lead to another. Right now, you're hearing it probably all over the news with the legalization of marijuana. Well, we're going to hell in a handbasket. If one person smokes pot, the next thing you know, they're going to be doing crack cocaine. Well, maybe, but that's not necessarily true. You can't draw that kind of conclusion. You're making an assumption that says that one action is going to lead to another. By the way, I'm not stating by any stretch of the imagination that that's something that you should be considering or even worrying about, because you're not. You're not supposed to, and I'm not advocating for it. It's just something that's happening in current media that's being debated right now. It's an important Canadian issue that's being changed by the government. And this slippery slope argument has come up time and time again for people who are fighting against the legalization of marijuana, stating exactly that one action, the legalization of marijuana, will in fact increase the number of people who are addicted to hard drugs. And in actual fact, we don't have the scientific proof at this point in time to determine if that's actually true. Don't do drugs. It's uncool, and that includes pot. And don't drink either. And don't get married until way after you're done your education and have a good job. Okay, I'm done with that. So, analyzing evidence. A strong argument requires strong evidence. Absolutely. A well-reasoned argument means little without relevant supporting evidence to prove it. I can tell you, as a former college professor, there were students who tried desperately to get out of writing exams or postpone because they didn't study, didn't want to study, or wanted to get a longer study period. So they would say, write me a note, send me an email the night before. I won't be able to make my exam tomorrow because my dog is barfing violently. This is actually true. Is barfing violently because he ate the rug in the kitchen, and now I have to take him to the vet. So sorry, I have to miss your exam. Well, okay. Not much I can say about that except for, no problem. I hope your dog feels better. but please do get a note from the veterinarian confirming that you were at the clinic, the vets, at the time of the exam, and I will reschedule your exam for you. In absence of a note from the veterinarian, you fail the exam. So you have to have supporting evidence to prove the argument that you're making. And so there are 4 essential types of evidence. So you've got factual evidence, proven statements, so a written note from the veterinarian at the time of when your exam was. That would be enough to satisfy what I need to rebook an appointment or an exam for somebody. Statistical evidence is data collected through studies. That's another way to back up perhaps the reason why I chose to ask for that doctor's note, because I can tell you statistically, because I have it documented, that 10% of students, every course I have ever taught, will try and get out of their final exam through either lying, not showing up to an exam, or cheating. So I'm using statistical evidence to make a decision. Testimonial evidence, and these are the opinions of the authorities. So for example, somebody comes to me and says, my dog is sick, I got to miss my exam. And I have a student who subsequently writes me a little note and says, hey, by the way, Johnny said he was sick with the dog, but I need you to know that he was out shopping in the States. And I saw him. And so now I have a testimonial, an eyewitness, somebody who's providing me evidence that's contrary to the argument. Anecdotal evidence is personal observations. And so in teaching, for example, and even for those of you who are my student athletes, your coaches, for example, and your teachers are looking for tested time and speed and accuracy and certain skill sets that are measured. So for example, for the baseball players in the room, we're actually looking at pitch speed, and it's measured by a gun that tells me you're throwing, a 93-mile-an-hour fastball. My observation, though, is that you've got, as your coach, a pitching form that's going to lead you to need Tommy John surgery in the real near future, because there's something structurally not right with how you're actually throwing. And so there's some adjustments that need to be made. In the teaching world, it's the same thing. Your test marks are one thing, but how you behave, how you communicate, how you participate, how well you get along with other people as it's observed by your teacher, all forms part and parcel of that anecdotal evidence. So to analyze evidence, you must determine its quality. So just because it says it's true doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Does the evidence make sense? Is it relevant to the given claim? Does it support the claim on its own, or is it additional support that's needed? Is the source of the evidence trustworthy? In the last year, and this is brand new for me, for you guys, by the time you get to be my age, it'll be just like something that's a regular occurrence. But this is brand new, and living in a community where there's such thing as fake news. Like, that's new, fake news. Why would you report something that isn't true? So determining the trustworthiness of a source is critical when you're looking at evidence. And there you have it. That is the end of chapter 2. So just to go back. Okay, and we're still recording, which is fine. Don't forget to do the questions for part 2 on rhetoric as part of practice. I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday at 6 o'clock at A21. Take care. If you have any questions, contact me through Canvas. Until next time, ciao for now.